Welcome to another session here with your Career Center. And today we have a representative from the Princeton Review, Kristine, who will be sharing with us information about getting ready for graduate school. And one of the biggest things that we have noticed throughout this, this entire time with giving COVID, that there have been quite a few changes in entrance exams and how to prepare for them. We're very excited to have Kristine here with us, who's going to share, how to best do that, how to best prepare yourself during this time, particularly for this next step, big step of graduate school. So, Kristine, welcome. If you wouldn't mind telling us a little bit about you and your role at the Princeton Review to get us going.
Absolutely. Hello, everybody. My name is Kristine Cather, and I'm the Director of Outreach and Marketing for Southern California for the grad programs for the Princeton Review. I've loved working with students and helping you guys realize what your challenges are as you prepare to set yourself up for success so that you can go into the next chapter confident and knowing that you gave it everything, and set yourself up for the next steps in your life. There are so many challenges happening right now. And one of the best things that you can do is arm yourself with information so that you are ready. Nothing will hold you up when it comes time for you to submit your application. And if there are questions that I can't answer here today, we're definitely going to put my email address in the chat so you can email me with your questions because I want to make sure I get the best answers for you. So just quickly in the chat, can you guys just write in what type of graduate school or test type, if you know the test type you're interested in taking? What do you plan on taking? Can you just enter that into the chat? LSAT GRE. Okay, Michelle, do you know? Okay, so this really is going to help. Are there any MCAT students? Or GMAT? Because I will go through the information maybe for those who registered but weren't able to attend, but I want to make sure that we get to the test types that you are interested in most. So I am going to go ahead and roll through. Yes, MCAT 2. Okay, great. Thank you so much. So LSAT, GRE, GMAT, and MCAT. Right now, I know there is a lot of information swirling around and things changed very quickly. The great thing is that the test makers are able to keep up with these challenges and they're still able to offer you the resources so that you can continue on your path to grad school. So for the LSAT, the Law School Admission Test, it's administered by the Law School Admission Council, or LSAC. And most law schools require the LSAT, but some also will accept the GRE. So you can definitely look into both exams. We do offer free practice tests that you can take online on princetonreview.com. One of the greatest things about taking these practice tests is you can see which one highlights your skills better. If the law schools accept either, this is a great way to know how you can position yourself best. We will provide information following this presentation on the links so that we can get you into those free practice tests. And those free practice tests are remote opportunities for you that you can do right now from your own computers, which is great, which is then similar to the exam experience. Let me get to the next slide. So typically what you would see if we were outside of this COVID period of time, typically you would see one section of reading comprehension for the LSAT, two sections of the logical reasoning or the arguments section, one section of the analytical reasoning or what we refer to as games, one section that is experimental, so you're not quite sure what you will get, and then one writing portion that you are now able to take separate from this administration of the exam. So this is typically what you would see: one reading comp, two arguments, and then games, and the experimental. What's different is during COVID, they're offering LSAT Flex. So during this period of time, LSAT Flex, and this is in response to what is taking place now, because typically you would have to go to a testing center. And recently they switched the LSAT from paper to a tablet exam experience. So what they're able to do now with LSAT Flex is you're able to register for the exam and take it online remotely for all affected test takers. So right now they have given dates as to when the LSAT Flex will be offered. But as you know, information changes daily in terms of when things will open back up. So just stay on the listen in terms of when centers will open back up or when LSAT Flex will then switch back to the regular administration. About the LSAT Flex format and the test sections, as opposed to what we saw in the prior regarding how the test was formatted, LSAT Flex will be composed of only 3 35-minute scored sections compared to the 4 35-minute scored sections plus the unscored section, which was the experimental. So you can go from just 3, 1 of each type, versus the 5. So this might be a really good time to take the exam for you if you would rather do it from home instead of in a sterile testing environment, and also only have to do 3 35-minute sections. So this could be a really good opportunity for you. Every LSAT Flex will include 1 section each of the reading comp, analytical reasoning, and logical reasoning. The test takers will continue to take the LSAT writing separately from the multiple choice portion of the test. Note also that the LSAT Flex will not include breaks for standard test takers. So that is an opportunity for those of you who might want that shorter test time. Maybe you can really focus better with 3 35-minute sections versus the 5 sections. And then you do your writing on your own, which is great. So typically it would be 3 hours and 30 minutes, the tablet test with the 4 main sections and the experimental section. There's no penalty for wrong answers. And here you see the dates for the 2020 LSAT administrations. And then you see the 2021 dates as well. And then to register for your exam, you go to lsac.org, lsac.org. So the LSAT administration, test takers are permitted to take the LSAT 3 times in a single testing year. And the testing year goes from June 1st to May 31st. You want to make sure that you are looking, as you're doing your research for law school, you want to make sure you're looking at several things with each school. And because there's going to be a lot of information that you're trying to retain at once, it's best to start a spreadsheet for yourself with the school, the test types that they're accepting. If they are taking the LSAT or the GRE, you want to note that. You want to note when the admission opens. What is the deadline? What type of admission? Is it rolling admissions? If it is rolling admissions, you want to make sure you get your application in early so that you can secure one of those spots. You have a better opportunity to secure one of those spots before more qualified candidates start turning in their applications a little bit later. You might also want to note the price, the tuition, if that's a factor. You want to note how many letters of recommendation. Who are the letters of recommendation from? What is the average GPA for the admitting class from the year prior? And what is the median LSAT or GRE score? And oftentimes for GRE, they'll give the verbal and then the math. So depending on the type of program it is, because the GRE is more of a general type of exam, and we're going to explore that in a little bit in a few slides in the future, they will give the separate, hey, this is the median for verbal, this is the median for the quantitative. But for the LSAT, you want to make sure that you note all of these things, because through practice and prep, you can raise your score. It does take a lot of practice to get through some of these games. Okay, so 3 times, you can take it 3 times in a single testing year. Again, the testing year goes from June 1st to May 31st, or 5 times within the current year, a total of 7 times over your lifetime. But the beauty of practicing and prepping and dedicating the time from the get-go is that you should not have to take it that many times. We will give you, or I'll provide a course discount specific to Whittier so that you guys have the opportunity, if you're interested in prepping, in finding a course that you can take remotely. With the live online courses, what is nice is that you get the hours of instruction from a live online experience where you're interacting with your instructor. Those live online sections are also recorded. So if they're explaining a games type of section and the specific type of questions or tips that you should be looking for when you're working within the game section. If you didn't quite get it the first time when the instructor was going through it, you can re-watch those videos so that you can really let that sink in. So that's the beauty of the live online sections, is that they are recorded and you can go back and re-watch them. In addition, they have online drills that you can work within, and then also 6 full-length practice tests from LSAT. The Princeton Review does have a relationship with LSAT, so we are able to get that LSAT subscription to the online free practice tests, which are included in the course. The books are also included too, so a lot of times students will say, oh, I bought the books, now I want to take the course. If you know you're going to do it, just realize that we can help you find a course, princetonreview.com, or you can email me and I can kind of get a sense of, do you want the full course? Are you looking more for just like the practice? Is this something you want to do the self-prep on your own? There really is something for everybody, but the key regardless is to put in the time practicing those drills, getting the instruction and the tips on how to master these different types of games and reasoning, and then also taking those practice tests and building up the stamina. So when it comes time to actually sit for the exam, you are fully prepared and you have the mental strength to get through the exam. Again, one big positive about the LSAT Flex now is it is shorter. So 3 35-minute sections versus those 5 sections. Let's see, please note the online remotely proctored LSAT Flex test dates do not count toward the total as they were administered as an emergency. Okay, LSAT timeline. Many law schools require that the LSAT be taken by December for admission the following fall. However, taking the test earlier is often advised, especially in the case where maybe you did not quite get the score that you know that you are capable of. At least it gives you that opportunity to take it again and you're not pressed for time, where you are still making it within the submission deadline, and hopefully even early, so that in case you are applying to a school that does have rolling admissions, then you can still be considered as one of those earlier candidates. Most students take it in the fall of your senior year. So, and also just be prepared for anything. I had one friend who lost his driver's license right before the LSAT and was stressed out. So it's like these little things that can add stress to your life. Just make sure you're trying to keep as close control of everything that you can, because the process can be so stressful. So practice and prep and going confidently. So when you take the exam, you know you're ready and you know you've put your best foot forward during the application process. So the skills tested, let me move this out of the way. The skills tested on the LSAT are reading comprehension. So this tests the ability to read with understanding and insight examples of lengthy and complex materials similar to those commonly encountered in law school. When you do get admitted to law school, nightly you will be assigned multiple cases in different subjects from your different professors that you really need to dig into and master in case you get called on in class the next day. And what happens in many law schools, they will call on you, that professor will call on just you for the whole hour or the whole hour and a half in a Socratic type of method, where they're peppering you with questions about the cases that you were supposed to read the night before. So they want to know that you can keep up with that course load and you show the promise to be a great lawyer who can keep up and read with understanding and insight and gain the nuggets that will help you reach that final argument. Also next is logical reasoning. So this tests the ability to analyze, critically evaluate, and complete arguments as they occur in ordinary language. So definitely skills that you want to see in a future lawyer, as well as analytical reasoning. So this tests the ability to understand the structure of relationships and to draw logical conclusions about that structure. The experimental section, if you are back in the normal LSAT administration environment, remember you have that experimental section, and that can be either reading comp, logical reasoning, or analytical reasoning. So again, if you want to avoid having to take the extra sections, right now with the LSAT Flex might be a better time for you. And then the writing portion, which you do take separately, tests ability to form an argument based on given facts, support an argument, and use written English to express the idea. Are you guys all still with me?
Yep, we're all here.
Okay, great. Okay, so during the typical administration of the LSAT, outside of this COVID period of time, you will have the 4 scored sections and then 1 unscored experimental section. The essay is not scored and all questions are scored equally, no penalty for incorrect or blank responses. The final scaled score will be between 120 and 180. So this again goes back to where you want to keep track of the schools that you are interested in and their median test scores, so you know what you need to shoot for to become a competitive applicant. So test takers will automatically receive their LSAT scores by email approximately 3 weeks after taking the test. LSAC will send score reports by mail approximately 4 weeks after each test, and test takers will be able to cancel their score only through their account in lsac.org starting the day after the test administration. And you will have 6 calendar days to cancel your score. So don't think because all of a sudden it's the weekend that extends your time period. It's 6 calendar days. So just be aware of that. So as I mentioned earlier, many law schools are accepting either the LSAT or the GRE, but you want to take a look at the schools you're interested in and see if that is the option for you. If the GRE is one of your options, then pay attention here because you might want to, again, take both practice tests and see which one highlights your strengths better. The GRE is also accepted at many business schools, whereas traditionally the business schools primarily focused on GMAT. That was the business school exam. Many business schools, including top business schools, will now take either the GMAT or GRE. So do your research again and see which schools are taking which exam and what those median scores are so that you are a competitive applicant wherever it is that you apply. So for the GRE, graduate record exam, this could be for law school, business school, or many other grad programs. Oh, that's what it says here on the sheet. So updates for the GRE testing for starting May 20th, 2020, they began offering an at-home version of the GRE. So directly from the webpage here, at-home testing for the GRE is for students who have been affected by COVID-19. Monitoring of the test will be conducted using live remote proctors and artificial intelligence technology by ProctorU. So you will have a proctor remotely through your camera. So you want to go and make sure that you look on the GRE on ets.org to find more updated information and also to get the parameters if you are concerned, like what if your dog comes in? What if your parent accidentally walks in the room? How is that going to affect the proctoring or your test? There are very specific details on those specific situations on the website. So the test for the GRE during COVID is going to be identical in content, format, and on-screen experience, and the scoring to the GRE general test that you would take at the test center. So the difference then is it's monitored online by a trained human proctor from start to finish to maintain test security. So what's nice is whatever you're practicing during your practice exams, your practice tests at home, it will be that same experience, but now it's in the comfort of your home if you are able to take it during this time. So again, a lot of times just walking into a test center can create anxiety. It's normally very sterile. There might be a long line to check in, traffic, there may have been traffic and parking, adding extra stress even before you begin your exam. So being able to take the actual exam in the comfort of your own home remotely, although it's proctored by computer, I mean, you might really want to take advantage of this opportunity to be in a more comfortable environment. Okay.
If you don't mind me asking, you mentioned something I think very key, especially for this new way of testing, right? it is happening from home, but given that they will be proctoring it, are there any suggestions in terms of, if I'm at home and I have many other folks living with me and that's my only place where I can take the exam, any suggestions, things that, can be useful for students to consider doing to minimize some of that additional background?
Yeah, absolutely. I would give your family and friends fair warning. If you need to put a sign on the front door saying testing in progress, please do not ring doorbell, put it on the front door of your home as well as on the door of the room in which you are taking the exam. Forewarn everybody, similar to if you're hosting if your family's hosting a big party in the neighborhood, sometimes you tell the neighbors like, hey, there are going to be a lot of cars, don't mind the noise. Same thing, give as much warning to your family members and friends as possible so they know that you're in this testing environment and it's from this time to this time. You can pad that time a little bit, put the sign on the front door of the home and a sign on the room that leads to where you are actually taking the exam. And hopefully that will be enough to at least create that barrier where you can feel like you have that space that you need. That's a great question. And sometimes it's things that you don't think about, and then all of a sudden the doorbell's ringing and your Amazon package is there and they keep, or whatever it is that it might be. Try to remove as many obstacles and challenges as possible by being proactive. And that's a tip for the rest of your life as well. Okay, so for the GRE, I reiterate this over and over. Look into the program that you're interested in. Is the GRE required? If the GRE is required, do they also require a subject-specific test? For if you are going to get a master's in psychology, some schools will require you to take the special written subject matter test, or whatever it is that it might be. So look into the programs, do your research, note it in your spreadsheet so that you're not caught off guard when it comes time to apply. We always say look at the application deadline, but for me, I really suggest look at when the application portal opens. You want to have everything ready before that. You don't want to be scrambling at the end because life happens and you are going to experience challenges and obstacles. So as much as possible, be on the earlier side. Think, when does it open versus when's the deadline? Because people tend to procrastinate. That's human nature. And it's nervousness. You are, don't let fear of rejection stop you from continuing down your path. So what are the score requirements? Meaning, make sure you note those median test scores. And then also consider your scores within the context of the rest of your application. How is your GPA? Do your GPA and test score, do they meet those median or minimum requirements that the school puts out there? Are you working on your personal statement? That can be something, if it comes down to it and they have a few spots left, that personal statement can make a difference. If you waited till the last minute and did not put time and thought into that personal statement, that could be the difference maker when a human eye and a human heart is then reading and trying to decide who takes these final spots. Letters of recommendation. Are these letters of recommendation, do they speak to you as a strong potential candidate? And does it sound like this professor actually knows you? Do they, or is this a superficial generic letter that could have been written about anybody by anybody? You want to make sure that you feel that this professor believes in you and they've seen your abilities. So that takes time to forge the relationship. You want to make sure that you are developing that rapport with your professors. I know right now it's not, you're not able to be on campus, but maybe there are other ways you can reach out via email. If there are open office hours, virtual open office hours, drop in, but also have something interesting to say or have some really interesting questions that you can pose. So show your interest and a deeper level of interest so that when it comes time to apply, you are not stuck looking for 2 upper division professors or whatever it is that your program requires to write that letter of recommendation for you. So if they require a resume, or if you need to prepare for an interview, just know what you are up against. Put all of those categories into your spreadsheet so you know what you're up against, so you can prepare for each step of the application process. For the GRE, typically outside of COVID, when they only have a certain number of spots in their testing centers, you want to make sure that you register early to guarantee the seat at the nearest testing center. Again, this could be a great reason why you should just take the test now. You're not having to deal with trying to get a specific slot or parking or all these other things that come along with driving to a test center. You can take it once every 21 days, but no more than 5 times within a 12-month period. It takes 10 to 15 days for the official scores to arrive at schools, and scores are good for 5 years, although top schools generally like to see them within 2 to 3 years. One thing that we've seen too is that students who want to take a gap year then think, okay, well, maybe I'll hold off on studying for the test, because of course, who wants to study for an exam that you have a fear of? But my recommendation to you is, while you are a student and while you're exercising those muscles in terms of, sitting for exams, writing those essays, really being able to focus on large amounts of information, complex information, you can take the exam while you're a student, and then if you're taking a gap year, you use that year to really get your experience, do research, do your internships, really focus on bolstering the other parts of your application that could help you stand out, so that you get that spot in the class. So typically, or actually 3 hours and 45 minutes, it's a multi-stage test. You can navigate within your section, meaning if there are questions that are challenging or you think you need to dedicate more time to, you can mark them to skip and come back to them later on within your section. You cannot skip to another section or go back to a section that you've already completed. And one of the key parts here that many students don't know about is that the GRE is adaptive by section. So I will go over what that means. Also, to register, www.gre.org. Okay, so the GRE sections and scoring. So here you will see you have 2 essays, and again, this is all computer-based. Even outside of COVID, it is a computer-based test. So a lot of times you will see a prompt come up for your analytical writing assessment, and when you have a blank computer screen staring at you, students tend to get nervous and they will just start typing a response. The key here is you want to come to a logical and reasonable. You want to come across as logical and reasonable. So you really need to brainstorm and take a moment to use your scratch paper that they do allow you to have in order to brainstorm, outline, come up with a cohesive way of forming your thoughts so that you do well and it reflects well on you. So don't fall into the trap of, oh, here's this essay prompt, screaming at me, and I'm just going to start typing. So you want to make sure to keep your common sense and your wits about you. And again, this comes through practice. So the quantitative section, quantitative is just math. So you're going to have 2 quantitative sections. It's high school level math. So for those of you who fear the math section of the GRE, just know you have studied this. It could even be pulling back from 7th and 8th grade information. It takes time to review, and then, which our instructors are really good, and we have GRE courses as well. The instructors will review the content, but they'll also review the strategy on how to approach these types of questions. And there are only so many ways the questions can be asked. So you're going to start seeing patterns that form. And so you will start recognizing after practice and after being coached by the instructors, like, hey, that's this type of question. I remember in class, we approached it this way. So I'm going to approach the similar question in that way. So it's these little things that they're hard to come by naturally. It does take practice, and it does take you committing yourself to learning these techniques. So verbal is also 2 sections. So 2 essays, 2 quantitative sections, 2 verbal sections, and then an experimental section, which will be either math or verbal. And for the experimental section, they're basically testing out questions that they want to use in the future. So they could be testing out questions, and maybe they discover that every single person got it right. So now this question's too easy, or nobody got it right, and this is a question that didn't provide enough information, or it wasn't worded well. So the experimental section, you don't know which one it is, so you want to give it your all on every section. But the beauty of this of practicing and prepping and putting in the time to really do these practice tests is that you will feel confident knowing the tendencies of these test makers, and you get into the groove of if you put in the time to do these drills and practice tests, so that you can go in confidently regardless of what is thrown at you. So if something is, and also you can stay calm. If there's a section that seems so out of whack, don't assume it's the experimental section, but it could very well be the experimental section. So just stay calm, approach the questions as you've been trained to do in your practice, and just keep moving forward. So what is a good score? A good score is a score that gets you in. For grad schools, though, some programs will weight each section differently. So these are the average scores of the test takers. However, your schools will have their median test scores. And an engineering program is going to weigh the quantitative or math section heavier than they will the verbal. Whereas if you're getting a master's in history, they'll expect to see the higher verbal score. So just really know what program and the schools in that program are expecting of you, so you know what you need to hit to be a successful candidate. So the GRE, when I was saying that it's computer adaptive by section. I'll explain what that means, but this is in opposition to the GMAT, which was the traditional business school exam. The GMAT is adaptive by question. So GRE adaptive, sorry about that noise. The GRE is adaptive by section. The GMAT is adaptive by question. So what this means now, the GRE, the section 1 of your verbal or your math, you'll have medium difficulty type of questions. How you do then determines the types of questions you then receive on the second section. So if you have medium difficulty type of verbal questions and you do very well, then you are going to get mostly hard verbal questions in your second section. The good thing is now, typically it gathers that you are answering these challenging questions, and you typically would then end up in that higher scoring range. So again, you really need to attack that first section strategically, and take your time, yet stay within the time. Use your pacing, use all the techniques that you've learned up to that point in order to position yourself so you end up in that higher bracket, potentially giving you the higher score. If you do okay, fairly well, then you'll get mostly medium type of questions, but then that scoring range then puts you in a different bracket in terms of what you could possibly obtain. And then if you do poorly, then you get mostly easy questions. However, you could end up in that lower scoring range. So a lot of times students are still a little bit confused. So I like to say it's kind of like the gymnast. When you see the gymnast doing a floor routine or whatever it is that it might be. So you have one person who hits the routine flawlessly, but because they didn't have the difficulty, they only did like the 2 twists versus 3 twists or whatever it is. Because they don't have that difficulty, the highest score that gymnast can achieve, regardless of how perfect the routine is only this much. Whereas you have a gymnast that has extreme difficulty, so even if there are small mistakes, because that extreme difficulty put them in that higher scoring range, they still could outscore the gymnast that had the simple routine but hit it perfectly. So hopefully that makes sense to you guys. I'm not seeing the chat, so I'm hoping that we are good with that. Okay. So the GRE quantitative, let me move some of these. So this is the math. You will see multiple choice, select all that apply, and numeric entry. The content, like I said, covers up to high school level math. So arithmetic, algebra, geometry, and data interpretation. One thing that trips people up though is even if you review the content, it's how the questions are asked, which is why the prep and the practice is so important. You have to review not only the content, but the strategy behind it, and then also practice the pacing on top of that. So know what you're up against so you can prepare yourself and arm yourself best to put yourself on the path to success. So there is a basic on-screen calculator that can pop up. if you need that. So GRE, the basic on-screen calculator, is a tool that you can utilize, and it's basic as in this. So for the GRE verbal, the format is multiple choice, select all that apply, and select in-passage responses. The question types you'll see are reading comprehension, text completion, and sentence equivalence. So it's highly important to practice and know what the test makers are expecting of you as you're in the GRE verbal, because say for instance on the sentence equivalence, if they have a sentence and they have one word underlined and they want you to find word that has similar meaning. As you're looking through it, typically if you have not practiced, we would tend to think, oh, okay, that's the one, and you might cross through all the other choices. However, they're looking for two, and you do not get half credit if you only mark one, so now that question is wrong. So practicing will help you know what the test makers are expecting of you. Or if there's a text completion, say there are 3 blanks within a couple of sentences, is that a question? And they'll give you 3 answers per each blank. So now you have to get all 3 blanks right in order to get this one question, which is of similar value then to this other freestanding question where there's only 1 blank. So in that instance, because you've practiced, you might know, hey, this is one I want to mark to skip and come back to, because I'm going to have to dedicate more time to filling in these 3 blanks versus just this one. So you really need to take the time to practice and prep so you are confident as you are approaching each section, not only for the content, but for that strategy. So the GRE test overview, like I said before, and this is just a reminder to wrap this part up, you have the 2 essays. You have math or verbal, there's a break, and then you have the experimental, which is math or verbal. Well, you don't know where the experimental falls, basically. So it could be anywhere within this, but it's math or verbal. So this is if you have the opportunity to take it at home and remove that stress of the sterile testing environment, this might be a good opportunity for you now. Okay, so we've covered LSAT and we've covered GRE. And now we're going to GMAT, which was the traditional business school exam, entrance exam. But like I mentioned, many business schools are accepting either the GMAT or the GRE. So take a look at those median scores and mark both of them if they are taking either, because we also have a practice test for the GMAT, so you can see which one highlights your strengths better. So for the GMAT, it may be required if you're pursuing an MBA or specialized master's in business. And like I said, the GRE is also being accepted at many schools. So traditionally, you would go to a computer testing center offered year-round on most days of the week. You can retake the GMAT exam after a 16-day period, but no more than 5 times in a 12-month period. This again is where, and I'm sound like a broken record now, but the practice and the prep is highly important, so that you don't have to take it over and over. You can be confident with the score that you get because you have done all the practices. You don't want the actual exam to be your practice. You need to put in the time prior so that you are ready and confident, and this is just something that you can complete so that you can start building the other parts of your application. So October and November are the most popular times of the year to take the GMAT. You want to register early. Outside of the COVID time period, you want to register early to guarantee a seat in the nearest testing center. Scores are generally good for 5 years, although some top business schools may want to see more recent scores. So really do your research. Official score reports are available within 20 days. Again, do your research. Research each program. What tests are they accepting? What is, I know we said here the application deadline, but you want to know when the application opens. What are their general GPA and GMAT or GRE median test scores? What will make you competitive? You need to have these targets and goals so you know what you need to focus on when you take your exam. And then, as always, consider the rest of your application as well. The GPA transcript, your personal statement, your letters of recommendation, your resume, and your interview. For the GMAT sections, outside of COVID, so in a normal testing environment, you would have 1 essay on the GMAT as opposed to 2 on the GRE. And again, this is all computer administered. So outside of COVID, you would have the 1 essay. Then you would have an integrated reasoning section, which is like reading charts and data and graphs and such, things that you will be doing as a business school student. And then you have the quantitative section and the verbal section. One nice thing is that GMAT has gone online to make sure during this COVID period of time to support you so you can continue to pursue your business school goals. And this is all info from MBA.com. So we all know that the pandemic has changed the world, but it doesn't have to change your path to business school. They created an online remote proctored version, whereas the regular GMAT is also online, but you would have to go into one of the testing centers. So now you can take that remote proctored version of the test from the comfort of your home. So that, again, is something that you might want to take advantage of. I find students are so much more comfortable even during meetings and such when they're in the comfort of their own home. It's your own environment. Anytime you walk into a hospital or a different office building, these little bouts of anxiety you might not know are affecting you, but they do. So being able to take the test from home might be a really good opportunity for you to really give it your best. This exam, it's flexible to meet your needs. The GMAT online exam appointments are available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and they can be taken on a Windows or Mac laptop or personal computer. So there are going to be 3 full exam questions: quantitative, verbal, and integrated reasoning. So what they're excluding on this during this COVID period of time, what they're excluding is the essay. So you will have 3 full exam sections: the quantitative, the verbal, and the integrated reasoning, excluding the essay. So again, take advantage of it if you are able to. It's going to be the same amount of time, the same type of scoring, and the number of items as a test center-based exam. They're just removing that essay. You have flexibility to use physical scratch paper or whiteboard or an online whiteboard. And it's always good to practice your exams doing the same. So practice the exams as if you are taking it during the actual administration. So everything is as similar as possible. You're recreating that environment so you are as comfortable as possible when it comes time to take the actual exam. They do have disability accommodations. It's accepted by over 7,000 global business programs, and complimentary unlimited score report sending during this time, during this COVID time. And again, this was from MBA.com, so you can get further details. So the total exam time is approximately 3 hours. So 2 hours and 45 minutes of the exam, 15 minutes for check-in, and 1 optional 5-minute break during this period of time. Normally you have the 3 hours and 30 minutes because they have that additional 30-minute essay, but just 3 hours for the online version at home. Just keep in mind, again, this is computer adaptive by question for the GMAT. So you cannot use the strategy of marking answers and coming back to them. You must answer each question as it is posed to you. And how you do, they have algorithms just like social media. How you do on this question then determines the type of question you will get next. And it will determine the scoring range that you do end up in. So GRE, which was the previous exam that we discussed, is adapted by whole section. So you can implement the strategy of marking questions that may take more time, and you can come back to those at the end. GMAT, which we're focusing on now, it's adapted by question. So you must answer each question to get to the next one. And you can look up all the registration information on MBA.com. Oh, computer adaptive, we went over that. And then again, this was like the general GMAT content when they were including the essay, if they go back to that on-site, outside of COVID testing period. So here, integrated reasoning, people wonder, okay, well, what does that cover? Graphs, tables, and text passages. They're looking at graphics interpretation, 2-part analyses, table analyses, and multi-source reasoning. For quantitative, it's fundamentals in arithmetic, algebra, geometry. So similar to GRE, it's high school level math. So you're going to need to review that content And our instructors are really great at helping refresh that part of what you may have forgotten along the way as you focused on other things. So they can help you refresh the content as well as focus on the strategy as you're attacking each problem, because the problems are not going to be straightforward. Or if you are running out of time, what are strategies that you can utilize to best maximize your score at that point? And then verbal, they're looking to go over a grammar and expression, argument construction, and reading comprehension. So outside of COVID, you are able to select your test section order. You have different options in terms of the order in which you take the exam. During COVID, they've limited that because there's only 3 sections. So they do give you the order. But if you are taking the test exam later on, when they go back to the standardized version of the GMAT, you can put the order in one of these 3 options. And what this does is it's another tool where you can strategize, and it's going to be completely up to you. By taking your practice test, you know what your strongest sections are. You know what your weakest sections are. You know if you would prefer to start off with your strongest section to build up that confidence, or you know, oh my gosh, I really tend to start not being able to focus toward that towards hour 4, and I really need to start with my strongest focus on my weakest subject, so then I can just roll right in where I'm confident when the 3rd hour hits, so I can, you know, get to the end. So once again, this only applies to the standard testing outside of this COVID period of time, but this is another thing that you should think about in terms of how you want to order the different sections of the exam to maximize your strengths if you're taking it once they get back to normal. Okay, how are we? Oh gosh, okay, MCAT. So COVID and the MCAT. They've come up with a shortened version of the MCAT and new distancing precautions. Last I saw, it was still, they were implementing 6-foot social distancing, sanitizing, and other precautions so that they could still administer in person, but always log on to the test makers' websites so that you can get the latest information, because news is changing daily. So you want to make sure that we stay on top of that. Let's see, 3 new dates were added to the calendar. So September 27th and 28th, MCAT registration was opened up back in May. For each testing date between May 29th and September 28th, there are 3 test appointments that will be held. So the 3 standard test times will be in local time, 6:30 a.m. If you are an early bird, this might be the greatest thing ever. 12:15 p.m. If you don't like waking up early, this might be great for you, because you might have had that fear the whole time, like, oh my gosh, I'm just not an early riser, I might not make it to the test center. 12:15 is great. Or if you really do like to sleep in, and if you are the night owl that is at your peak, you have your peak performance later in the evening, the 6 p.m. time slot, which is unusual in terms of test administrations, this might be a really positive thing for you. Keep in mind that the non-standard test times are also possible. So be sure to check the appointment that you are given. Don't assume that you have the 6:30 a.m. start time if you remember, oh, I have the morning slot. Don't assume it's 6:30. It could be 8 a.m. or whatever it is. So just double check that time. Or if you think, oh, I have the afternoon one, your test time could be moved slightly. If someone ahead of you had been given different accommodations for testing, you might start at one of the odd times. So just always double, triple check your time so that you, again, are not thrown off the day of the test. No exam will begin prior to 6:30 a.m. or after 6 p.m. local time. So the shortened version of the MCAT during COVID, the total seated time has been reduced from approximately 7.5 hours to about 5 hours and 45 minutes. That might not seem like that big of a deal, but when you are facing intense questions, that could really be something that you use to your advantage with this shortened format. The total content time has been reduced from 6.25 hours to 5 hours and 9 minutes. You will still be tested on all 4 sections of the MCAT exam. There will be fewer questions for each section, however, but the same amount of time per question. So don't think, oh gosh, just because it's shorter, I'm getting less time to attack each question. No, they contemplated all of that, and you are given the same amount of time per question as those folks who do take the regular version. So the longer standard version or the shortened COVID area shortened version, you still are having the same amount of time per question. There will be fewer questions for each section, but the same amount of time. And you will now have 3 10-minute breaks instead of the 10-minute break, the 30-minute break, and the 10-minute break. So when you're taking your practice test, you might want to, or you definitely want to accommodate for that, depending on when you're taking your MCAT, during this COVID period of time or in the future. Use the breaks that you will be having to work around during your actual testing time. And that you might need to use strategically in terms of the restroom, a snack, getting, stretching your legs, whatever it is. Plan every piece as much as you possibly can so you are in as much control as possible throughout the exam. So here is a summary of the format changes. So in the blue, you have the full-length exam, and then in the green, you have the shortened version, the shortened 2020 version of the exam. So in the beginning with the full-length exam, you have a 10-minute tutorial. You see in the green for the shortened 2020, that tutorial has been removed. So for the Chem Phys section, you typically would get 59 questions in 95 minutes. However, they've reduced the number of questions to 48. And you see here, you've got 76 minutes. And the time per question, that's that last column, time per question, is very much the same. Here's where you have your 10-minute break on both the regular version and the shortened version. And then you have your cars section. So typically you would have 53 questions in 90 minutes. They reduced that to 48 questions in 81 minutes. And again, the same amount of time per question. And here is where that difference in the breaks come. Typically you would have that 30-minute break. For the shortened 2020 version of the MCAT, you have just that 10-minute break. For biochem, you would typically have the 59 questions in 95 minutes. But during the shortened version of the MCAT, you will have 48 biochem questions in 76 minutes. Again, 1:36 time per question. And then the 10-minute break. And then Psych-Soc, 59 questions in 95 minutes versus in the shortened version, you have your 48 questions in 76 minutes. And then typically you would have 5 minutes to void, whereas now you have 2. So you might want to think about that. But in terms of this voiding your exam score and such, if you've practiced and prepped, you should, unless there's like a health emergency that you have, you should feel confident because you've gone over the content, you've gone over drills, we even have something fun called Medflix, similar to Netflix. So it's Medflix where they go over specific content. We prepare you so well for the MCAT that you should feel confident. You've had all the hours of instruction. You've taken the drills. You've had custom drills. You've taken the practice test. You are ready to take the exam and you are ready to submit that score. So be confident in yourself, but that confidence only comes through practice and prep. So what you need to know then about the shortened version of the MCAT, you will still be tested on the same content as we saw side by side. We went down the list, it's still the same content. The questions will not be any harder or easier. You will have the same amount of time per question. It's the same test, just a bit less of it. So if you were thinking, oh gosh, I'm not sure if I want to take the shortened version, it's going to be unfamiliar to me. If you practiced and prepped, you are ready for this. It's the same test, just less of it. So test center expectations. You must meet various health requirements to be admitted to the testing center. No exposure to COVID-19 within the last 14 days and no symptoms for 72 hours. You can see a full list on the website. You must bring and wear your own face mask while you're at the test center and throughout the exam. So that means you should practice with the mask while you're doing your practice test so that, again, you're removing anything unfamiliar. You are getting used to everything, practicing the way the exam will actually be administered. If you're afraid of forgetting your mask, always keep an extra one in the car. Just always have that on hand. Pack 2 in the car. Just have it ready so that that is not an extra layer of stress for you. You must stay 6 feet away from other people in the waiting area and during the admissions process. Some test centers may require candidates to provide a temperature check upon arrival. It is your responsibility to ensure there are no travel restrictions in place for the location where you want to take your test. So you do need to be proactive. And just like they will expect you to be as a doctor, be responsible and do your research in terms of what the expectations are. So safety measures, workstations will be 6 feet apart and distancing will be enforced. Hand sanitizers will be available in the waiting area and prior to entering the testing room. Pearson is increasing the cleaning and disinfecting regimens between all testing appointments. Tissue will be provided upon arrival. You're permitted to bring and wear disposable gloves. So if that's something you're choosing to do, please practice in that, because you don't want to be uncomfortable during this important exam if you have not practiced in them. And you will be reminded to wash your hands upon arrival. A few tips on how to best prepare for the shortened version and how to thrive on test day. You want to practice at the same time of day that when you were assigned. So if you were doing like the evening, 6 p.m., you want to practice your test at that time so your body can adjust to that. Take your practice test under the same social distancing protocols that you plan to use on test day. For example, wear a mask for your practice test and gloves if you're planning on wearing gloves. It is still useful to practice with the full length practice test because you're going to be utilizing the same pacing. The shorter practice test means less breadth of content. So the full length practice test will give you more content to review. Scoring will be more accurate on the full length tests, and you get used to those 95 minutes, which will make 81 minutes feel so much shorter. However, you also want to make sure that you reduce your break times to match the new format. You need to get used to having less time to eat, etc. The biggest change from a timing comfort perspective is the breaks. So remember, you don't get that 30-minute break. We recommend bathroom only for the first and third breaks and food only for the second break. And you want to practice that as you're practicing those practice tests. So pick a food source that can be consumed easily and quickly. Stay away from high sugar snacks to avoid a sugar crash. The suggestions we have: yogurt, protein bar, apple cheese that are pre-cut, or nuts and bananas. Plan your surrounding meals accordingly. So you want to make sure if you have that 6 p.m. test that you've eaten prior, or that noon test that you've eaten prior, even that 6 a.m., make sure that you allot enough time so that you are comfortable and satiated before you have to sit for this very important exam. Don't forget all the usual stuff: sleep, positive mentality, etc. We do have the online practice tests that you can take for all of the exams that I've discussed prior. The one caveat is that for the LSAT, although the students in our courses get the full online experience with the practice test in our courses, they're still transitioning where the questions are a PDF download, but the answer bubbles are online, and that's for the LSAT. So we're still transitioning the LSAT free practice test that we have on our website to completely online. However, the answer bubbles are online and the questions are in PDF download. If you are a student in one of our courses, all of the practice tests are going to be online, and that's available. They've made that transition already. Also, one thing that students really don't take advantage of is after they take the practice test, students tend to see the score and never go back into the student dashboard. And the student dashboard is going to be on princetonreview.com, which is where you take the practice test. The importance of going back into that student dashboard is to look at your score report. After you take the exam, it doesn't have to be that same day. You can give yourself a break because we know that you worked hard and put in so many hours. but you want to go back in and click on your score so you can expand and see which questions you got right and which questions you got wrong. It will show that. It will also show what you marked through. If there are, say, a reading comp passage, you can see where you actually highlighted. It will show your markings. Did you not utilize the highlight tool effectively? Did you highlight everything and now you can't find the important pieces? Did you not utilize the feature where you can mark, where you ran out of time at the end because you were not using pacing and process of elimination and really organizing yourself to work through the questions strategically? So go back through the score report, and this is the bit.ly link, bit.ly/grad score report. Although it focuses on the MCAT, all the score report, the process to see the score report is the same. And it is just a valuable tool that many students miss out on. They don't go back into the score. They don't see which questions they got right, which questions they got wrong, what the right answers are. And then also it just gives you a high level view of your strengths and weaknesses so you know where you need to focus your prep. So the score report after the exam is an important tool that many students really do miss out on. You can raise your score. We have money back guarantees because we believe in our process and we believe in our instructors. We go to princetonreview.com. I do want to create a special promo code discount specific to Whittier College so that you guys can benefit from the relationship that we've developed with your career center so that you can really prep right so that you can score high. For you med school students, we have a free tool that I want to make sure that you're aware of. It's the Med School Management Tool. And I don't know if you can see this or if that's in your way. Okay. But the bit.ly link, bit.ly/medschooltoolkc. The Med School Management Tool is a free tool that provides a roadmap of what you need to do in terms of activities and experiences to be a successful med school applicant. It really provides an amazing outline of what you need to do for clinical, shadowing, research, academic. It's a helpful tool that will help guide you as you're preparing to be a well-rounded applicant so that you can be one of the ones considered for that next incoming class. Oops, let me move this bar out of the way. Partnership opportunities. If you are part of a club and you would like us to speak to your club, if you're in a pre-law club or pre-med club, pre-business club, we definitely can reach out to me via email, and we can set something up where we talk to the members of your club as well. So we want to make sure that we're able to help you in any way as you go through the process, which could be daunting, intimidating, but it does not have to be. The biggest chunk of it is knowing what you're up against, and a lot of students want to keep the blinders on because they are afraid of it. But remove that fear by just diving in, know what you're up against, know what the parameters are so that you can start attacking that and putting yourself in a position of success. Any questions, please direct my way, Kristine.Cather@review.com, Kristine with a K, Cather with a C. And I am just super appreciative of you guys sticking with me. I hope that you were able to get as much information as possible, and I hope that all made sense. I know it was a lot at once, but I'm here for you, Kristine.Cather@review.com.
Kristine, that was a lot of information. I was like trying to take notes as much as I possibly could as well on my end, but that was all very, very helpful information. So thank you so much for that. I wrote down as best as I could the bit.lys as well, and we'll make sure that students get those. I'm super excited about the free access to the medical school management tool. Super, super excited to share that to our students as well. And definitely would love to connect with you a little bit more. I know our pre-law club students would be more than happy to continue this conversation, especially, you know, the thoroughness that you provided for the LSAT. That was wonderful. So thank you so much. I know that we are out of time, and I will definitely make sure that students get your contact information should any additional questions come up. But I think the information was pretty thorough. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Sandra. And again, I do want to follow up, especially with the students that that RSVP to the event, to make sure that they do get access to the business code or the promo code, to ensure that they have an opportunity to really take advantage of that. And I appreciate the you welcoming me to campus.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And thank you all for attending today. We will be making sure that this recording is available to you all very soon.